Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. Oh boy, the corporate media propaganda against Cornel West and his third-party run is certainly not stopping. And in this Morning Joe clip, we also got an ode to Joe Biden's moderation and the squad's discipline. Buckle up. This is going to be rocky.
What is the best argument when you're talking to no labels, trying to dissuade them or trying to encourage them to move in one direction or the other?
Well, first of all, I agree with Tom that we should be very concerned about the prospect of a second Trump term. Anyone who thinks Donald Trump can't win next time round is not paying attention, wasn't paying attention to the margins in places like Wisconsin in 2020, doesn't understand how American politics works, which is fundamentally a two-party system. And then there's a few swing voters and a few people who want to vote third party. I think the third party threat is very serious. It's always been very serious. I don't think it just comes from no labels and a Joe Manchin type, but it also comes from someone like a Cornel West, who I personally have a lot of time for his politics, but I think it's mad for the left to vote for Cornel West when fascism is at the door. And Cornel West himself in 2020 said fascism was at the door and didn't run third party then. I take your point on 2000 with Ralph Nader. Joe, 2016 I think is a little bit more complicated because it's not just Jill Stein. There's Gary Johnson who was taking votes away from Trump. So there's an argument about whether Stein and Johnson cancelled each other out. We'll never really know. But look, the third party candidate threat is very real, even going back to Ross Perot in the early 90s.
Oh boy. And that's Mehdi Hassan, who honestly, on the long row of MSNBC ghouls, I actually happen to like from time to time. But in this clip, so wrong on a variety of levels. First of all, the whole fascism's on the door. Sorry to tell you, Mehdi, maybe because you're from the United Kingdom originally. Fascism long ago opened the door, actually stormed through the door in America. So it's encroaching and we need to stop it. Yes, Donald Trump is a threat. Yes, he is an authoritarian brand of fascism. Yes, there is certainly a white supremacist, violent conspiracy movement brewing underneath him. But to pretend that we don't have fascism already in this country, I got news for you, pal. You ever hear of Standing Rock, the fight at the Dakota Access Pipeline, where police paid for by the U.S. taxpayer literally worked at the behest of an oil company to literally brutalize indigenous activists and Standing Rock Sioux tribe members who were performing the crimes of banging on drums, chanting, and trying to stop a toxic, dangerous pipeline from going through their reservation and desecrating their sacred land? You ever hear of the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI working with a private Blackwater-esque contractor to surveil the camp, infiltrate the camp with moles? That's not fascism. What about the prosecution of Julian Assange that President Biden has been happy to continue after it was initiated by the Trump administration? You don't think that's a little fascistic to the power of the state, i.e. the government, to have a political persecution crusade against a publisher whose crimes are publishing and revealing and exposing war crimes perpetrated by the United States against foreign countries? That's not fascistic. Inventing crimes like Julian Assange helped Chelsea Manning hack a password, making Julian Assange right now one of the longest serving political prisoners in America, even though he's in the United Kingdom. 1, 2. You don't think it's fascistic to make Julian Assange a political prisoner in the United Kingdom, languishing away with the chances of him dying at some point due to malnutrition, mental health, and other issues going up year after year? That's not fascistic. That's not fascism. Past the door? Give me a break. What about Biden's DOJ not stepping in to stop the assault against Stephen Donziger, a human rights attorney who committed the crime of legally going after Chevron for poisoning Ecuador and the Amazon in Ecuador by dumping its waste at Ecuador, giving people cancer and killing people? Stephen Donziger was imprisoned for years through house arrest and then federal prison. A U.S. prosecutor wouldn't take the case. And then a private prosecutor with ties to Chevron railroaded him for years. This was the first time a lawyer was treated this way by the U.S. government, but Merrick Garland and Biden administration would not step in to put a stop to it. You want to talk fascism? What's going on right now in Atlanta, Georgia, where hundreds of acres of forest are being cut down so that a militarized police compound can be put in with massive gun ranges and helipads, and they're actually collaborating with the Israeli Mossad in cross-training. It's being dumped right on top or next to a predominantly black neighborhood that doesn't want it. The whole community, the majority of the community doesn't want it. The Democrat mayor and the two Democratic senators are quiet as a mouse as the Democrat mayor and the Democratic city council railroad it through. That's not fascism. Police actively surveilling activists is the norm in America. You have a group in Houston, Food Not Bombs, that is being fined nearly $100,000 for the crime of handing out food for the homeless. But fascism is at the door. And to be clear, I'm not minimizing Trump's brand of fascism, but please, that fascism is at the door and we don't already have fascism. We have plenty of fascism. It's corporate fascism. The unholy cabal between the government and corporate America, i.e. the United Corporations of America. And of course, he throws out more about the spoiler effect of Cornel West. I'm glad he at least was honest that Jill Stein did not cost Hillary Clinton the election, pointing out that Gary Johnson had as many votes as Jill Stein that were pulled by potential Trump voters. He's wrong about Ralph Nader, who did not cost Al Gore the election because, say it with me, Al Gore won the election. Al Gore won the election. But it really gets better because the next part of this clip is just absolutely beyond the pale. Buckle up, folks.
I would say this about no labels. You want to talk about us being on different sides. Let me say this where I disagree with you, Joe. You're far too generous to the no labels people. When you say, I don't agree, I don't question their motives or their intentions. I do. I don't know what the hell it is. I mean, Molly puts the point, hope they're naive. It's at best a vanity campaign. At worst, it is a kind of right-wing op. Joe Manchin spent years undermining Joe Biden's presidency, undermining the Democrats in the Senate. And now, after saying, it's rubbish, it's BS that I'll leave the party, he's now considering a no-labels presidential run. What I would say to someone who pushes this line, and there are a lot of ordinary Americans out there who do say, look, I just want someone in the middle. I want this kind of bipartisan age, Donny side of the polls. I would say one very simple thing. That person exists. His name is Joseph Robinette Biden. He is the guy of moderate bipartisan dreams.
Oh, that guy exists. Joseph Robinette Biden, the moderate in an insane political world. Yes, the moderate. The moderate. Let's show you how moderate Joe Biden has been as president. We already know he abandoned a $15 minimum wage. We know about abandoning the public option and many other broken promises. But Biden is very moderately trying to privatize Medicare. Biden's little publicized Medicare privatization scheme is starting to raise alarm bells. I've covered this and interviewed folks like Michael Lighty with the Sanders Institute about Biden continuing a lot of Trump's policies on healthcare that are a backdoor privatization scheme when it comes to Medicare. Oh, he's so moderate. He allowed 15 million people to be thrown off their Medicaid at the end as the COVID emergency was declared over, even though if you live in the Northeast right now, COVID is surging, but the media is pretending COVID is over and doesn't exist. With that end of the COVID emergency, the COVID vaccine is now possibly going to cost as much as $130 per shot. But the Biden administration, very moderate, tis, price gouging behavior takes advantage of the trust of the American people have placed in you through the COVID-19 response. Biden's Health and Human Services Secretary Xavier Becerra says. So please, I'm the moderate. I beg of you, Big Pharma, Pfizer, Moderna, please don't price gouge. Very moderate to trust the big pharmaceutical companies as you, wink, say, gouge away. Because that's what's really going on. Part of ending the COVID pandemic legally and politically in legislation was to allow them to price gouge because they're also bought off by the same big pharmaceutical companies. Oh, you want moderation, Mehdi Hassan? Biden is approving more oil and gas drilling permits on public lands than Trump. But wait a minute. Didn't the moderate Joe Biden run on, say it with me, ending public drilling on public lands? How moderate of him. How moderate of Joe Biden to approve the Willow Project over the objection of many, many, many environmental groups, including indigenous groups. Earth Justice filed a lawsuit yesterday on behalf of conservation groups to stop the massive Willow oil drilling project in Alaska's Westic Arctic, which the Biden administration approved March 13th. This approval of an enormous new carbon pollution source undermines President Biden's promises to slash greenhouse gas emissions in half by 2030. Well, Biden, as the climate inferno continues, doesn't really seem to care between the Willow Project, between doubling permits for drilling on public land. The moderate Biden seems to think we have more time so that he could shower his fossil fuel donors and Wall Street donors who are heavily invested in the fossil fuel industry with one last dance and hoorah. But Biden, who, like many other resistance Democrats during the Trump administration, cried crocodile tears over Trump's draconian, harsh policies at the border and with immigrants, well, the moderate Joe Biden seems to be continuing them. Joe Biden is bringing back Donald Trump's asylum ban at the border. Biden to replace Trump migration policy with Trump-esque asylum policy. Biden eyes restart to migrant family detention. I'll tell you, if this is the 2023 version of moderation, I would hate to know what a second Biden term brand of moderation, where he doesn't have to worry about re-election, is going to look like. No, that doesn't mean I want Trump, but got to call a spade a spade. We could tell the truth about Trump, and he has certainly done terrible things and is certainly a threat. But let's not pretend Biden is some moderate, just like it's a joke when they call Joe Manchin supposedly moderate. Joe Biden has always been and is now a right-wing corrupt politician that, frankly, is stuck in the 1980s, politically speaking. Now, let's finish this clip because Morning Joe seems to be very pleased with certain progressive politicians who have not really caused a ruckus or a fuss in the Biden presidency. Let's take a listen.
Well, and you know, it's what I've always said to my friends that have said, "Oh, Biden," my Republican friends, "Oh, Biden, he's left wing, he's a Marxist." Are you kidding me? The biggest knock on Joe Biden was he was too kind to the banks and the credit card companies. He was the senator from corporate Delaware, and I will say this, the progressives pre-Biden always got the knock of being unrealistic. I have been absolutely blown away by the discipline on people that I would consider to be on the far left of the Democratic Party. They have shown more discipline. Dealing with a guy, Mehdi, who is extraordinarily moderate. He really is. If you look at where we are between the left and the Democratic Party and the right and the Republican Party, he really is the moderate. He ran against 14, 15 progressives in 2020. And they said, we'll take the moderate. Yeah.
Joe, what I say is, you look at AOC. AOC has said in the past that in a European country, her and Joe Biden wouldn't be in the same party, right? And yet AOC has come out and endorsed Joe Biden for re-election, taking a lot of flack from some activists on the left. But the reality is the left understands two things. Number one, there is a fascist threat at the door, number one. And number two, Joe Biden's actually governed in a pretty progressive way and taken on board a lot of Bernie ideas, Warren ideas, and, you know, not as many as some of us might like, but more than we thought. And you can build on that.
Where do you start? I don't have another hour. First of all, what Morning Joe there calls discipline, obviously he's talking about the squad, primarily AOC. Others might call cowardice. You know, how bringing the ruckus to the Democratic Party became magazine covers and let's sing along, kumbaya. Oh, we got to play the long game. And, it's more complicated. And we're doing a lot behind the scenes that you don't know about. This coming from those disciplined progressives like AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, Ro Khanna, Pramila Jayapal, Mark Pocan, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, they've certainly been disciplined in surrendering right out of the gate to Joe Biden and essentially abandoning their promises to take it to the Democratic Party, to the people that door knocked for them, to the people that phone banked for them, to the people that donated money they didn't have for them. Yes, very much so. But when Mehdi Hassan continues to say, oh, well, they understand that there's fascism at the door. Well, maybe they don't understand that there's already fascism inside the gates, have breached the gates, have stormed the gates, as I've meticulously outlined. Make no mistake about it. Even the Mehdi Hassans of the world, who I consider one of the tolerable MSNBC hosts, don't completely get it. And this is the kind of argument we're going to continue to be hearing in the perennial attempt to take down Cornel West as the spoiler and as the emboldener of fascism at the gates. Folks, yes, beware of Trump, but let's not whitewash Biden and the Democrats.